Good day, everyone. I'm Alexis Brooks from Quest, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's Cloud Learning Series on Oracle Move to Cloud in partnership with Oracle. Today, we'll be discussing what are the best processes to leverage for cloud by Brian Beckman and Keith Williams from Oracle. Before I pass the floor, here are some important housekeeping notes before we get started. All attendee lines are in mute and will stay in mute throughout this session, but please feel free to drop your questions in the chat section within Zoom. This session is being recorded and will be added to Quest Content Library. And at this time, I'm going to pass things along to Brian to get started.
All right, thank you, Alexis, and glad to have everyone here today. Just a bit of background and introduction of myself. I've been in ERP and HCM, essentially system implementations, my entire career. In fact, started off with some COBOL programming back in the day. But today, what I do for Oracle is I lead our HCM delivery. So responsible for our consulting staff that is trained and participates in projects in implementing HCM in our solutions and our delivery approach when it comes to HCM. So excited to be here today to talk to you all about how we do that. Keith?
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Williams. Like Brian, I have responsibility here at Oracle for ERP delivery. So responsible for the team and staff and the solutions that we deliver tied to financials, supply chain, performance management, and a little bit on the technology side, securities and controls, et cetera. Like Brian, I've spent the majority of my career in the consulting space and in the technology space. I know it well. I started in consulting on August 4th, 1995. It happens to be my birthday. And so I've been doing this for quite a year, hence the gray hair and receding hairline. I was lucky enough to spend a little bit of time, which is germane to this conversation, in industry, working in what we call industry before getting into consulting, and lived through some transitions from legacy applications into new applications. So before I even get into consulting, I got the opportunity to be able to spend some time doing so. So I'm excited to be able to spend some time here with my counterpart and Brian and with all of you to talk about some things related to how companies look to move forward. So today's discussion, what we're really going to hone in on is kind of 3 or 4 different things here. One, we want to talk about the opportunity with cloud and what are those opportunities and why the consideration is there. Brian's going to walk us through a little bit on how the cloud is different, because it's different. I mean, it is different, and especially for companies that are coming off of many years of legacy on-premises applications, it's different in a good way, but it is different. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll talk about how do we get there? How do we move from, what are the applications that you're working with today to the cloud, and how does that move somewhat work, right? How do we utilize some of the leading practices and tools and et cetera to help us to get there? Everything from sort of assessing and analyzing the current environment, using process-led design approaches. How do we use leading practice to help to really move things forward? Another topic of what we'll cover today. And then we'll kind of close off with, how do we help and support increased adoption? So how do we really prepare for the usage and the change that's associated with that move from today to the cloud? So really excited to be able to spend some time talking through these and really get us there in terms of what the opportunities are that lie. So the opportunity. So there was a Clash song from the 80s, a punk band called The Clash from the 80s. And the song was, "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" And if you know the song, now it's in your head, but that's the song. And the next line is, "If I stay, there will be trouble." So it's interesting, right, to look at that question of, will you stay or will you go as it relates to, on-premise and cloud applications. Everybody's evaluating that today, right? Everybody's taking a look at, does it make sense? Does it make sense to move? Does it make sense to upgrade? Do I do parts? Do I do the whole thing? And there's just a great deal of evaluation annually as to, is this the year that I stay or is it the year that I go? So I'm curious with all our participants, I'm kind of curious as to where the audience stands today, where everyone stands on your decision and where you are in the process for that search. So should I stay or should I go? So we got a little poll. So I'm going to get everybody active in this. And so kind of question being, are you currently looking? And if we can get everybody to take a minute and jump through and take our poll, we'll take a peek at and what those results are and where people stand with respect to what they're looking to do. So take a moment and answer us there.
And Keith, you did it. I can't get that song out of my head.
Exactly right. So as we go through and folks answer the poll question, it is interesting. The cloud has been out for a significant amount of time at this point in terms of working with Fusion applications in the cloud. Yet we still ask this question, which really means that there's a lot of investment that has been had, over the years, not only, financial investment, but human capital investment in the implementation of the systems that we all use every day to run our businesses. And so it's interesting that we, as we continue to, and as it continues to mature and more organizations move that direction, it's interesting to sort of see where folks are with respect to their thinking around movement and what that timing sort of looks like. So interested to see what we get back in terms of results. All right. I love the fact that there's a 0% of not moving anytime soon. So that's good. So it's interesting. I think this is a good view of the maturity as we look at the movement from on-prem to the cloud. And I think it's pretty indicative of what we've seen over the years. And it seems to kind of stay a little bit consistent. And Brian, we'll get your observations here in a second too, but it seems relatively consistent of where folks are going in terms of adoption and movement to the cloud. So Brian, thoughts there?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Keith. It is interesting to see here that almost half of you are considering the move to the cloud. So hopefully what Keith and I are able to go through with you today will be of help. And those that are in the middle of the move to the cloud, hopefully you can pick up some things as well, even if there are some topics that we're taking you through that might be new to your experience and what you're doing to get to the cloud, that hopefully we can help you out. And those that are in the cloud, part of the messaging that we will have today is around the cloud. Moving to the cloud is only the beginning. Much of what we're going to be going through can also be applied continuously in your optimization and how you're leveraging the application. So let's shift here and talk about our mindset shift. So it's great to see again how many are interested or already moving to the cloud. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here in this statement. As soon as you make that determination to move, you have now set your path to a whole new experience, and it's time to let it go. So maybe another song reference just to get that in your in your head. So what do I mean by that? It's time to force yourself to think about future state without being encumbered by current state. So on premise, of course, you've been through numerous upgrades, and it's all about what you have, and then upgrading to the newest version and dealing with customizations and integrations that you have. And then hopefully there's some new functionality that's in that newer version. But when you talk about the shift to the cloud, it's not an upgrade. You truly, want to free your mind of what you're doing today. And you certainly will want to understand and document your differentiators and your uniquenesses that are part of your business. But you don't need to document your processes. To get the most value out of the cloud implementation and to set you up for even greater value realization in the future, you're better off starting with leading practice processes and then tailoring them for your unique needs. And yes, we as an implementer, will challenge you when those unique needs are based in what you do today or not wanting to change, and not necessarily a true business need to, moving forward. So let's give some examples on how to make this mindset shift. So starting from the top, the technology shift. On-prem was about the technology and having to customize it for your needs at that time. Well, the cloud works, and the cloud has the underlying functionality and ability to tailor, for your needs. So that frees us up to focus on the business outcomes and process first. And the experts, we can configure the technology to work for you. That's not a problem. And that way we are not changing the underlying technology and all the issues that come with customizations like an on-premise. We are truly marrying up your needs with the standard functionality and processes that come delivered. So Keith, how's your experience been in guiding a customer through this?
It's interesting. I was having a conversation just last week with the CEO of a Swiss-based bank-based company that is looking at transforming and completely digitizing their business. And it was interesting. There was some PG-13 language even in his description of it as he looked at it and as he was communicating to his team about the driver behind this project needs to be business outcomes. It needs not be around how do we do things today from a business process perspective, or what are our sacred cows in terms of tools that we use. So the way that we get to where we want to as a business, and they're trying to double, even almost triple the size of their business, is a way that they do so is by taking the leading practices that come not only from the technology itself, but the associated business processes from a leading practice perspective. And that's how they want to adopt and drive it moving forward. So it lines right into the kind of a couple that are here on the page, or right into that first one around that technology centric design versus business outcome focus. He's like, I'm focused on the business outcomes. I want to double the size of my organization, and I can't with what we have today because I can't get the data that I need. I can't simplify the business processes that we want to drive. So I mean, he point blank came out and said is like, unless it actually is something that truly, truly, truly makes us amazing above anybody else, we need to adopt to what the leading business processes are and how that's aligned to the technology. So it was interesting, and the timing of it was kind of perfect for this conversation, which is this is way he is driving his executive leadership team and how their transformation is going to happen from a technology perspective. So very apropos in terms of timing and how that aligns to that business outcome focus that he's looking to drive.
Yeah, and that's a great story, Keith. And I've been on a little bit of the opposite of that at times, where a customer might have made the decision to move to cloud because it was a financial decision or their current application was at end of life, and it was started as a technology centric project where we had to say, time out. Let's look at what truly you should be leveraging this project for, and that's okay to say.
Exactly right.
Yeah, if we move on to the point I wanted to highlight here is the shift from what if to why not. So I recently kicked off a project for a global organization where the different regions and countries operate differently, and we certainly knew it was going to be a challenge. And so the process of to reuse a word, of putting the processes up on the wall, the leading practice processes, and challenging everybody to say, why can't you from this country operate this way? And of course, we did get a lot of challenges around because of this, that, and this. But then, the customers, sponsors, and leaders, spoke up and said, but we're not really sure that that's true. How can we come together and truly understand why we can't adopt these? Of course, there will always be the local regulations and nuances that will be there. But at a process perspective, why can't we do this? And so that's another, key component here. The third part here is that, a cloud project is about rapid deployment of value-driven functionality with a continuous and long-term ability to optimize. So using this project to truly enable your team to be empowered, don't be afraid to, go live on functionality that will help you immediately, and then continue to roll out new functionality and optimize from there. The old way of, how we did projects in on-premise, where everything needs to be perfect and then you flip the switch and the whole world changes, doesn't have to be there. This really is about more an iterative approach on rolling out functionality. So Keith, do you have an example of that?
I do, but I should say, fortunately and unfortunately, it's a lessons learned, right? It's sort of the negative example. We've seen a lot of examples of organizations really pushing and driving to the approach that you talked about, Brian, which is, let's get out there, let's utilize the application for rapid deployment. So the conversation with the CEO that I mentioned earlier, this is his approach too. Let's spend the first year, let's get it in place, business unit, and then we start to roll it on. Now, unfortunately, I've seen the other side of this, even in cloud implementations, where there's this focus on this is everything that we have to do. This is how we do it today. There's some legacy thinking. There's some designs that we've done for other parts of our business, and so that's got to be right for this to be right, and so that works and this works, and right. And so what we took, so a typical, call it 3-month global design cycle, is now for them in month 9, right? Because they could just continue to have that conversation around, well, Scott, this part's got to be perfect. This part's got to be perfect. And taking a step back, not only just from how do we do rapid and simplify, but it also goes back to that business outcome and adopting technology piece of it sort of tied together. For them, unfortunately, they didn't tie those 3 things together when they first started. So now they get it and see it, and now it's going to drive that direction. But it can have definitely a negative impact if you don't embrace this, right? It's the whole thing that you talked about, and the kind of the slide title right there is embracing the new way. If you embrace those new ways, there's so much opportunity for great business outcome that can come in tune with where we push from a cloud perspective. So.
Yeah, and that goes right to that graphic that's or picture that's on the left side of the slide, right? Continuous. It sounds like your customer example is stuck in that delayed perfection type situation, rather than just the continuous improvement. And certainly our projects, the cloud projects, are not meant to take anything backwards, but it is with the power of the cloud and a rapid deployment implementation, you can get that level that will allow you to maintain where you are and then move forward.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's shift here to talk about some of the different components of transformation here. So why is it important to move from customization requirements approach to a business process approach? Well, again, this is back to what the cloud brings, and the customers that embark on the journey to the cloud focused on value driven are going to be able to see the results much quicker. And remember the mindset shift. This is not about moving on-prem to the cloud. This is about the new world, and let it go. The functionality is there and you can use it. Looking at the journey to the cloud is a transformation and starts with people and process to maximize that value. And then the technology can come with that. So Oracle Cloud is an enabler for the initial releases of the functionality and for the continuous innovation, which will come every quarter, as we know. So at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Keith to talk more about process-led design.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Brian. It's interesting. I think the saying is what's old is new at times, right? So when I started in consulting several moons ago, a couple of eclipses ago now at this point, considering the eclipse the other day, a lot, I focused in on, I was in management consulting before I got into technology consulting. And back in the management consulting days, we always started somewhat process first, right? Let's do business process reengineering first, right? And you would start with, hey, let's spend months creating process flows around our as-is business process, and then let's evaluate them. And then from there, let's determine what the to-be should look like, and et cetera, right? That sort of prolonged sort of approach to it. And sort of what's old is sort of new, but it's got that new twist to it as it aligns to the cloud. So what we want to talk about is, as we look at things from a process-led perspective, is there's a few pieces of it, right? Let's not forget the fact that we've got legacy applications that we're working with, right? So we've got to do some analysis of that to understand what that looks like. And there's, as we look at where it says assessment and analysis, there's a piece of that certainly we need to look at and how we approach that portion of it. Because again, a lot of investment, financial and human capital investment in enabling the technologies that you have today. So you can't just flush that part, right? There's got to be that review and understanding of what's there and how that gets enabled in the new world. So that's a portion of it as we look at it. But what you will hear in the theme of what I will talk about, and anybody that that works with me and my team here at Oracle, they will tell you that kind of a broken record about talking about process first, process led, right? They get kind of tired sometimes of, I think, me talking about it, because that becomes really, really, really super important. Now, what's different today than what existed almost 30 years ago was we would start with process and then we kind of get to technology. Well, the two are so coupled with each other anymore now that they don't do it that way, right? And that's one of the enablers and one of the powers of where we go from that. So we'll talk about that process-led part of it as well too. And then there's the leading practice adoption that goes along with that. So there's kind of three pieces that we're here when we talk about it from a process. And then there's the leading practice and adoption side of it. So we'll jump into it. So what you see on page now is a high-level view of our methodology, TCM Plus. It's the Oracle methodology that we use for from an implementation perspective, and it starts at sort of listen and align, right? This is a point where you're really trying to understand and learn about what's going on, and then there's the mobilization side of it, which is getting the team ready and getting that team enabled for the program. And then there's design, which is just like it sounds, right? This is where we get into the design aspect of it. And then you've got localize and validate and go live and optimize, right? Which are also very, very important parts. So what we're going to talk about, well, kind of hone in here a little bit, is these first three pieces, which is the process-led design approach. And what I will always argue is that the process side of this needs to start day one. We have a tendency to start from a technology view at times. I think you look at, I used to have a conversation with my dad, who was businessman and, back in the 60s and 70s. And I used to ask him, like, all the time, how the heck did you guys do this when there wasn't computers? He never had a computer in 30 years of his career, never had one on his desk. His admin never had one, like he never had one, right? So how did you run things from that perspective? He's like, well, we just ran our business processes. Today, I think we have a tendency at times to sort of think about, because technology is so tightly coupled to what we do, I think we always kind of default a little bit to the application, the things that it does. Like, we'll go in and have conversations with some of our clients, right? And we'll ask them a question about something for order to cash, and as an example, right? Or whether it's procure to pay or record to report, or go through any of them, right? And they'll start to talk about it, and they name the system. Like, the system comes out and that's what they name sort of first, right? And that's okay, because that's the technology that you use. But really, where I'm a broken record sort of soapbox is, like, day one, you need to be talking about the process. Like, order to cash, are there challenges there? What are the opportunities that we have? How do we drive that? How do we improve? Who's engaged? What's the accountability, so on and so forth, right? From the very beginning, to understand how that will flow through in the way that you look to enable the business. And when I say enable the business, and then tied to that is the technology that goes with it. And hopefully, done correctly, those two pieces tied to one another is what drives the business outcomes, right? So that's that kind of whole thing. But start day one. Like, if there's any leading practice of anything you hear today, and Brian's got some great things to share with everybody, but the one thing I would say is start talking about process from the very beginning, because that's what's really going to help align this, and it helps to streamline it. And there's a lot of there's uber benefits that go with looking at it from that perspective. So we'll start here in kind of the journey, right? And our methodology is the pieces that we'll look at from a process-led perspective, somewhat upfront. So let's jump into the assessment part of it, right? So certainly enhancements to legacy applications is a part of what we're all familiar with, right? You can talk about it in sort of different terms, right? Some folks might call it ChemLE. There might be folks out there like me that are old school and call it RICE, right? Reports, integration, configure, conversions, extensions, right? So there's, regardless of what you call it, you made some investment in your current technologies that either do or don't, depending on their criticality, need to morph their way into the new world. And so what a part of what we've talked about and what we can really help with is doing that analysis, doing the assessment to understand what your customization, if you will, footprint looks like today, we can benchmark that against the industries in the industry that you're in and be able to benchmark that to understand how that does benchmark around the investments that other organizations in your industry have made. Excuse me. And then identify from that also what some of the impacts are associated with that, whether those are change impacts, that are impacts to the business process, impacted to the usage of the technology, and the like. I can give you, how much time do we have in terms of the number of examples that both Brian and I can give on situations like these where we have gone in, and the number of enhancements, the number of customizations, the number of reports that have been written over the years. Like you'd like to say it's arm length, but I'd have to have like Shaquille O'Neal length arms, right? For how long the length of and list of enhancements that the companies have made to the organization. So it's interesting, right? To sort of look at how custom are you from a usage perspective? Like how much time have you spent? How do I compare against peers? What are opportunities that I should focus in on? Example, client of ours, we went in, now it's just reports, not that it's just reports because reports are important. 280 customer reports in one particular area. Spent the time, looked at it, benchmarked them against what they're doing, looked at the out of the box that comes from that comes out of the box, the usage of different enablers of visibility of information, took that 280 down to 20. Right. And it's because just over the years, somebody would say, hey, I like this particular PPV report, but I would also like it to show this. And then that PPV report that was written for somebody that retired 12 years ago sort of still precipitates. And then somebody's like, well, we still need that because we use it every day. Well, you're really right. Can we look at how do we optimize some of the information that's there, visibility of the information, give you the keys to be able to go in and drive some things in terms of your ability to pull data forward, is all a part of this, right? Doing that analysis. So one of the things that certainly we do, especially if you're going from, on-premise Oracle application to the cloud, right? There's tool sets that will run that helps to pull out that information, give you visibility to, what that looks like. And so then that can be used certainly as an indicator and driver for how moving forward into this new world, which would be the cloud. So you can see, right, it's some benchmarks here from a grouping of peer groups, some things in public sector, and others, what this sort of looks like, right? And you can see some pretty high percentages, especially on the added side. Modified, of course, at times there's going to be some modifications, et cetera, but certainly on that added side, there's quite a bit there with respect to the changes and movements that people have made. So Brian, I don't know if you want to throw in an example or an example quickly, but of where you've seen some situations like this as well.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I would add here, Keith, is how many times, have we gone and started working with a customer that we ask, okay, we do want to understand, where you're coming from to make sure that some of the differentiators that we aren't going backwards. Of course, it's not against the whole, mindset shift philosophy that we're putting here. And they say, honestly, we don't know what's there. We've had changeover in the organization, and the person that did a lot of this is now retired or has left, and we have no idea. So that's where I think this can really help, that we could at least run the analysis and just make sure that we're not missing something and understand what's there. And then your example, Keith, on the reports is always a big one on, okay, it's there, but when was the last time it was run, and what is the business decision that's being made based on that report? And you start narrowing things down to let it go and have that start with a clean slate.
Yeah, exactly right. I think one of my favorites over the years, did an implementation for a heavy equipment manufacturer in Central Texas, and their production planning system was actually named after the person that had written it. So you'd ask them, you go, so where do you go look for work orders? And they go, well, you go look in John Clary. And for the longest time, I'm like, I've never heard of this application. And then finally, after we got sort of done with discovery, it was like, oh, well, he was the production manager when we wrote the system, so we just called it that, right? So always kind of interesting to get to some of those stories. So let's jump into the sort of process and technology design side of it, right? So you might be thinking, hey, Keith and Brian, you guys have been talking about process-led quite a bit. What does that kind of mean? And do you walk in, can you walk in the door with some things? And the answer sort of to the latter part of it is absolutely yes, right? So Oracle historically has, and many of you have been involved with Oracle over the years, has heard the term OMBP, right? They used to, the Oracle Modern Best Practice Processes. Absolutely, right? So what, when we begin, right, you look back at that, we had listen and align, and then we had mobilize and design. Once we get into design, and again, the focus needs to be on the business processes. And part of why you want to start those conversations day one from a business process perspective is so that you can identify where the processes are that you really want to hone in on, because those are the things that help you drive, they're going to drive either, positive business outcomes, or that are things that do differentiate you at times in the marketplace, right? When you look at a company, right, every company has an identity, and that identity is how they drive and how you might drive market share in the particular industry that you're in. And because you do something in a particular way, that can help you drive different market share over other organizations. And so by starting to have that conversation on process early, you can ferret out which business processes are the ones that do have some uniqueness to them that you can really focus and hone in on, right? And so then when you go into design, you're not spending your time in design on things that are like, oh yeah, well, this is a totally simple process and we do it the way that kind of anybody does it. And so therefore, when, yes, you kind of snap fingers, we can adopt what is the leading practice for that business process. And then what you can really do is spend the appropriate majority of the time focused in on those things that are unique. And so what we would do is bring in that vantage point, which are level 2, level 3 business processes that then focus in on and hone in on that conversation. Now, one of the things that we certainly do is we have built the business processes that align to the leading practice opportunities for the technology, such that then when we talk about a business process, we're certainly not going to bring in a business process that won't align to leading practice of the technology. So when I think I mentioned it sort of earlier before, and back early in my career, right, you'd start with as is and to be business processes. And then you would kind of get to the point where you'd start to talk about technology. Well, that's an antiquated way of looking at it. What is old is new, which is we're looking at it from a process perspective, but those things are totally tied to the technology, right? And what is the best way to approach things from a business process point of view? How is that best aligned to the technology, and how we can link those two things together? So we look at it, right? This all helps from an adoption perspective too, right? If we come in and start talking about, oh, look at this screen in order management, look at this screen in recruiting, look at this screen in whatever particular area, although people are interested in the screens and everybody wants to look at the tool, that's really great, but it really helps from an adoption perspective, like right off the bat when we start talking about things from a process perspective, and do so from the very beginning. Remember back to the story I talked about from the CEO of the Swiss-based company. He's like, I want to be talking about process. I want the team to think about this in terms of what are the outcomes and how we can just adopt and be better at the process so I can build our business. So that's all a part of it too. It helps with that from the very beginning, that we're talking process, and it helps with the adoption. It also helps from a mobilization perspective, and then it helps downstream as well too, once it comes time to roll out the technologies, because then people are thinking in terms of process, and they're thinking in terms of how this really aligns to what folks are going to do from a day in and day out. So really important for us, we believe, in looking at this from that process-led perspective, and this is how we drive our design. We start talking about it early. Once we get into design, and Brian mentioned this a little bit, right? We even, we'll stand up and print things up and put them on a wall sometimes if we need to, and get the team together to look at those processes, understand where there are uniquenesses, and then how that can help and drive from a design vantage point. So we think this is one of the absolute most critical ways to really drive this forward. Is let's look at this from a process-led design perspective, tied in then to technology. Okay. So then we tie this as we continue sort of down into from the process design into leading practice. then it becomes a tie-in between, we've talked about it from a process perspective, and now we want to tie into it from a leading practice point of view. And we talk about sort of the difference. You may sort of say, well, Keith, leading practice means sort of process and it means technology and et cetera. And you're right. It does. When we talk about sort of the leading practice adoption side of it, now we get a little bit more into the usage of the technology, right? How do we best utilize the technology? What is the best out-of-box approach? How do we avoid customizations? And so a big portion of that, again, is that tie back that we've made of leading practice usage of the application tied back to the process-led and leading practices from a process perspective, how those two tie together, right? So how do we best take advantage of the processes and the application, those leading practices there to use out of the box to avoid things, customizations, so on and so forth. Also, a portion of how we do that, right, is you start to prototype and move through. It makes it more meaningful as well, too, as we can sort of prototype. When we look at things from that process and from a leading practice perspective, it makes it more meaningful, right? It's not just a demo of the application. It starts to really tie in and look to configuration. So Brian's going to take us a little bit deeper into what the design stage sort of looks like and how we drive it from there. Brian, over to you.
Yeah, sure. And I think to hit something home that you were talking about, Keith, and that process led, it goes back to that is literally day one on the project that we are starting those exercises and looking at those processes. Recent example, I actually already talked about that global customer that we went through this exercise and understanding that this was going to be a challenge in bringing everyone together. They flew in over 50 people from across the globe representing their different regions and countries to come together to have essentially the why not sessions, right, on process. And when we do those types of sessions, they have so much more outcomes and meaning than just around the process. It's about bringing everyone together and being ready for a transformation like this. So let's dive into a little bit about how we approach design from an iterative standpoint. So one of the best examples that I like to use here is around the Mona Lisa. So we talked about using the out of the box why not approach, and the efforts can be focused on the small percentage of uniquenesses that your business brings, relatively, right? So that's where I like this analogy that we can truly start as like a paint by number exercise where it's all mapped out. But as we go through those first iterations, we might adjust some colors or shift a line here or there to truly make it your painting. And then overall, it begins to take shape. But as we know, a full system implementation is not just about the core configuration and kind of our traditional design that we think about, but it's about the data and integrations. So those get layered in subsequently, to really bring the whole thing to life. So you can see across this slide that each prototype hones in on what this painting, your painting, is eventually going to be like. But a key aspect to make all of this work is that prototype one, so that paint by number, over there, truly needs to be meaningful for you as the customer, not just a demo of out of the box. We want to understand through that listen and align and some of the early sessions that we have to align it to you and your industry so that you can begin to make decisions based on what you're seeing there in that prototype. So let's go into some more details on our iterative approach here. So as this is a different view that has the different components of each iteration. So you can see across the picture here, functional, data migration, integrations, reports, and how each of it is building upon each other in each prototype. And down below, we see the overall project and change management and cloud culture that goes throughout. There's a key component on here that actually is maybe too small of a font, but that's where you see where it says primary and support. So the green area there. That the idea here in the prototypes is to shift the ownership and enablement from the implementer to you as the customer. So certainly out of the gate, we're going to be helping you with prototype 0 and prototype 1 and into prototype 2, but that's really where it becomes your system. And so where we even in prototype 2 here, where we say primary is Oracle and the support is you, you are primary when it comes to signing off and experiencing the processes that we have in there, and then ultimately leading you to be able to execute prototype 3 and the playback there with us in the back of the room. So that's where we're helping you through that, so that your overall adoption and enablement in the application and the solution itself is there at that point, not at go live, at prototype 3, and that you could take it through UAT into go live. I recently participated in we did prototype 3 for a customer that's implementing payroll. They've already implemented, core HR and talent and recruiting and other functionality throughout the world, and now they're implementing US payroll. And is really quite amazing. As we typically see, with customers, there might be a little bit of hesitation or even stage fright on, okay, can I really be up presenting this process and leading the team through it? But it really is an awakening moment that allows that, oh, okay, I got this. We can make this happen and take it through to go live, so that go live is a non-event. At that point, it's just going through what the team has already gone through. So let's shift to the transformation component of this. So we talked a lot about process, for sure, but we also need to focus on the people. So you will need to prepare your employees, your end users, and your vendors for this change. And just like everything else we've talked about, that preparation starts on day one. So with the initial process reviews that Keith and I talked about, you're also assessing the change impact. So the change in the processes, maybe the change of who is doing those processes, so you can assess that level, so you understand what type of communication and education training that is going to need there or need to be there throughout the project. So make sure that you have that change plan in place, whether driven from your organization, your delivery partner. Certainly Oracle Consulting can help. But do not leave it. Don't put it as a couple weeks before go live, we need to get everyone trained, and then we'll flip the switch. This needs to truly be throughout, so that everyone is involved in this change. So if we go down to the next slide here, really to bring it home, start early with your change plan, assess impacts, and follow through with communication and training. With cloud comes added functionality like Oracle guided learning that can not only help you in how-to questions, but really accelerate the adoption and empowerment of your organization. And as we said over and over again, cloud is different. So you need to prepare for life after go live, or the initial go live, before go live. So because your go live, you will already be looking for new ways, to optimize. And before you know it, you're going to have your first quarterly release. So make sure that your organization is set up for success here, that once some initial functionality is live in the cloud, your journey begins there, in the sense that there will be newer functionality that you've already said that will be after the initial go live. And then the great development team here at Oracle is going to continuously be giving you new things to be excited about, every quarter. So be ready for what that brings. I'm going to talk a little bit about, speaking of hypercare, a number of customers have asked us, okay, we get it. We understand that message, but, how can we truly prepare for go live? Because it is going to be a shock, to your, to the system, right? And so understanding how your organization is going to support the functionality, and it will be absorbed and prioritization and put it through is certainly a big component of that, and that's something that we can help you out with. But also, I would encourage you to really leverage your overall Oracle relationship partners that Oracle brings. So it's not just about consulting services. Oracle provides the customer success, customer service, your sponsorship that will be there to be there after go live and throughout your entire tenure with Oracle. So begin to build those relationships and leverage them throughout the implementation itself, so that after the initial go live, that it's easy just to continue on, on your journey. So with that, Keith, why don't you talk about some takeaways here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Hopefully everybody's has enjoyed the conversation. I know that I have. It's something that both Brian and I are very passionate about when it talks about helping companies make this transition and drive out business benefits. So when we look at this, right, it's not just an upgrade, right? As we look at moving from on-prem to where we are with the cloud. Brian mentioned this a couple times. I mean, it's different in a good way. And it's different. So it's not just an upgrade. We're not just, it's not like for liking. You're moving from today to the future, which will drive some really great benefits. So that part of it's important from a takeaway perspective. There's a lot of really great things that come with that transition, right? So it's that opportunity to use the cloud as a way to simplify things. To my example in Switzerland, right? That's their opportunity, is looking as an opportunity to be able to simplify a lot of what they do. It helps them to also eliminate some of the things around customizations. We talked about the approach that you can use and some tools that we have to identify what that looks like. It helps to simplify the business processes, right? If you can look at it and say, hey, here's a standard business process that drives leading practice in terms of the adoption of the application, why wouldn't we do these things, right? It gives that great opportunity for it. Great way to drive change in the organization, right? Sometimes, there are sacred cows that are out there with respect to either tools that are used or reports that are run, or processes that are run a certain different way. And it gives a great opportunity to be able to sort of drive that and to start from the very beginning, because we're starting to talk about things from a process, right? So it really helps to drive not only the business opportunities, the change to the business process, but also that adoption from a people perspective, and really get people locked in, right? There's no better employee than someone that enjoys their job. And if we can give folks the tools to be able to enjoy what they do, it's way more fun. I mean, I know for myself included, if I've got the tools to do the things that make life easier so I can think about things strategically, way more fun. Gives me more opportunity to do things that the team enjoys, that I enjoy, and that it's more fun. It gives also that same opportunity and excite the team and build that cloud culture. We talk about things from a cloud culture perspective. And so also it's also very helpful from that perspective. So, hey, shout out, right? It wouldn't be it wouldn't be a conversation like this if I didn't get to ask you all to do the things that I enjoy to do. So engage us. We're here to help you move this forward. Love to do these things. It's why I do what I do. It's why I've been doing it for almost 30 years, is that it's just something I just really, truly enjoy, as an opportunity for myself and Brian and the team and Oracle Consulting to be able to really help to advise on this and really help to drive that path forward. So looking forward to hopefully the opportunity to work with you.
Great. And Keith, well, let's open it up. Certainly encourage anyone to put any questions in the Q&A, or even in chat. We should be able to get to get both of them. I do see that there was one question asked here. You wonder some of the biggest concerns to consider during the data migration in a cloud transformation, and how do we support this for non-Oracle on-prem systems? And so that's a great question, because we've talked all about process, because maybe to us, the data migration component is something that comes along with it, certainly is a requirement, but we built a lot of tools to make that as seamless as possible. So when it comes to Oracle on-premise to Oracle Cloud, we do have what we call our SOAR tools that will automatically do that extraction and can load directly into the cloud. from a non-Oracle on-premise application, or even from another cloud application, we would just need to work with you on understanding how the data is going to be extracted. But then certainly the transformation of it and loading into cloud is something that we can certainly help you with. I think what I would answer the question about what are the challenges and what to think about from a data migration standpoint is, number one, how clean is your data? So be prepared that when you're doing data migration, especially depending on how much data you're going to be migrating, is the complexity goes way up as the number of transactions, the historical viewpoint that you're going back to. And I think that that's the second component of this, is back to our theme here on Let It Go, is that really think about what is absolutely necessary to be there in cloud from a regulatory standpoint, or just transactions and data that you will need to do proper reporting, year-over-year reporting, or look up HR transactions from the last few years, whatever it might be. But don't feel like you need to bring it all over, because that just increases the effort. So that is something that we do have as part of our initial mobilize phase, is understanding truly what is necessary to bring over to cloud. Let's see, do we have any other questions?
I think there was another on the Chemly side of it, specifically to extensions. And so kind of we think back to on-prem days, and even going back to EBS, there was the opportunity to even sort of get at the source code, right? To write these complicated extensions and enhancements to the application. And there's so much of that exists. I mean, I can remember the days of people saying, hey, I need to add this particular table so that I can, extract information and do transformations for this particular report that we're writing, right? Just some very complicated sets of extensions, enhancements, extensions, kind of the same that existed in the previous world. Now in the cloud, one of the differences, which is good, right? This is where that extensibility and the continuous improvement from a release perspective comes in. You don't have access to the source code anymore. Can't get there. We as even Oracle Consulting can't get there. But what we have done is we have created in the PaaS solution sets, is we've created the opportunity to be able to still provide, if needed, based on sort of specific business outcome, business cases that are needed, that opportunity to be able to still create some enhancement to a particular process if needed, to be able to release and maintain that release management and maintain integrity of the application moving forward. So there's that opportunity that still exists. The difference is you're not tinkering with source code, which then allows for that migration into different releases to be more seamless. So.
All right, thanks, Keith.
Absolutely.
I don't see any other questions at this time. Let's go on to the next slide here, and I want to put a shout out to a couple sessions that we have coming up at Blueprint. So we have 2 sessions. So on the customers that are moving to cloud or interested in moving to cloud, our own Betsy Reynolds is going to go through more of the transformational aspects of that Keith and I alluded to. We had a couple slides on it, but Betsy is going to certainly take you through a lot more details on that. But if you're not quite ready for the cloud, so some of that percentage, David Downey is going to go through some of our consulting expertise and tips to optimize your on-premise platform, because we do have a practice of experts that on the Oracle on-prem applications. So please join us in those upcoming webinars. And with that, I think we're handing it back to Alexis from Quest.
Okay, thank you, Brian and Keith, for generously sharing your expertise with us and collaborating with Quest to offer this series to our community. As today's session wraps up, we do ask everyone who's joined just to share quick feedback through a brief survey. And finally, if you found today's session valuable, like Keith and Brian mentioned, we would like to extend an invitation to explore the Oracle Cloud Summit at Blueprint 4D, taking place at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas, from May 7th to the 10th. This is an excellent opportunity for you to engage with the Oracle product teams and to benefit from robust programs tailored to assist you in preparing your teams for the transition to cloud. So we look forward to seeing you there and wishing you a wonderful rest of your day.